Hello and welcome to the NewsOK Varsity High School Football Podcast. I'm Scott Wright of the Oklahoman, joined by Jacob Unruh and Trent Shadid once again this week. Guys, we're right in the middle of championship month, I guess, 2-week period, or however long it ends up being whenever 3A gets to play.
Maybe 2-month period.
Exactly. We'll see what happens with Class 3A and when they get to finish their stuff. But let's begin the podcast today by taking a look back at the games that we just got to finish. Class 6A 1, Division 1, Jinx and Union went to the title game. Jinx comes through with the 21-14 victory. Any surprises that Jinx was able to turn it around after losing to Union in the regular season?
Wasn't really a surprise to me. I like how Jinx came around this season and really got better, especially defensively, which is where they lost a lot of their superstars from last year. You know, Stephen Parker, Dylan Harding, those guys were gone, and Marquise Overton was left, and they all formed kind of the nucleus around him with some other really good defensive players, and they got, Cooper Nunley had a really big game at quarterback for him for the second straight year in the title game, and I think he's kind of flown under the radar as a solid quarterback that not turning heads recruiting-wise or anything like that, but he's the kind of leader that Jinx looks for at quarterback.
Well, that game's just sort of kind of a toss-up.
Yeah.
We're kind of used to that now at this point, and I guess Jinx kind of just had to bring their offense along as the season wore on, and I mean, they obviously finally did that, and that's why they kind of peaked there. But and just from following on Twitter, I mean, we were all at different games, so we didn't see it, but from what I saw on Twitter, it seemed like maybe Union made just a couple more mistakes, and there's the difference in a 7-point game.
Yeah, it definitely sounded like things weren't going real smooth for the Union offense the way they had for the previous 2 weeks, particularly in the semifinals against Mustang when I was up there for that blowout. So very interesting to see the way that it turned out. But it really is almost a toss up, and it seems like every time that whoever wins the regular season matchup ends up being the team that loses in the championship game whenever there's a rematch. So really always fun to watch, and we'll see what goes on from here. But Jinx, 3-time champion now, or 3-time in a row anyway, in Class 6A, in the largest division of Class 6A at this point. So moving on to 6A2, I think was probably a little bit more surprising for some folks. We had Bixby come through, the one team that kept winning games that nobody was really talking about as a legitimate contender until they were actually maybe holding the trophy in this thing. But they upset Lawton. Trent, you want to talk a little bit about that game for us?
Yeah, it was interesting. Bixby really controlled all 4 quarters. I mean, it was tied 14-14 at halftime. And I mean, it was close for most of the game, but yardage, Bixby was just rolling it up, and they were able to contain Lawton. Their defense was outstanding. I was really surprised by that. I knew that Bixby was able to score points. And they got a solid quarterback, and then Nick Roller at running back is just a bowling ball, just run you over. I mean, he's got to average at least 8 yards a carry. You can't bring him down. So they were able to control the game there on offense with their running game, made some plays in the passing game, but the defense was what surprised me so much. They did an outstanding job of slowing down Lawton. And, I think one thing that was interesting, a point you made in a story earlier this week, I believe, Bixby played Jinx. 66-20 they got beat, and then they're the 6A2 champions. So there you see that the 6A1 and 6A2 separation really is necessary.
Yeah,
I found it interesting that someone told me about Lawton was that they never really got in sync, and I'm curious how much the week off affected that, because that could have knocked a team out of sync.
Right.
I'm not saying that's an excuse. I have no idea, but I know Randy Breeze was really excited about that week off. I wonder now if you ask Randy Breeze how much he would say he wants that week off or not now.
Right, and I mean, you could really look at the same thing with Tulsa Union. It could have been a similar issue because, like I said, they were their offense was peaking in the semifinals when they played that ball game. So who knows? That's a really strange situation for high school kids. They're not typically in that situation. So very interesting. Nick Roller, I think, was the guy that really surprised me in this game because even given his physical skills, I thought that Lawton would be big enough and strong enough up front to on defense to handle him. But it sounds like he played a heck of a ball game.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, there was maybe 5 of his 42 carries, I believe it was, that he got stopped for for just no gain or 1 yard, because, I mean, if he can get to the hole, even if there's somebody in it, he's getting 3 or 4 yards, and that just does a lot for you, even with as big and physical as Lawton is up front. He's a really interesting player to watch. It'd be interesting to see, because he's only a junior, what sort of recruiting attention he gets, because he's not just a burner. He's not real fast, but, I mean, he can hit you and he can get some yardage. So it'll be interesting to see who comes after him next year.
Could he be a fullback maybe?
Yeah. See, that's the thing. I think he projects probably as a fullback, maybe even at the Division I level. I mean, I would sign him up. Or even if I'm a school like you look at what the offense, the academies run with the triple option and stuff, and a fullback that can just, you want him to get 3 yards every time. That's the type of kid that he is.
Interesting. Well, let's move on to Class 5A. Jacob, if there was a surprise in this one, I think maybe that it was as one-sided as it was, even though, I mean, it wasn't a huge blowout, but I mean, I thought Skytook might give Lawton MacArthur a little bit better game than they did.
Yeah, I really thought this was a game that was going to be closer than what it was. I mean, Skytook has come in and they had beaten Guthrie. They'd beaten McAllister during the regular season. They had beaten some really good teams, and you thought they had the kind of defense that might be able to get some stops. But just right off the bat, MacArthur opening drive goes, I think it was 65 yards and 13 plays, scores, gets 3 and out, kicks a field goal, gets another 3 and out, goes 90 yards this time and scores to make it 18-0 before Skytook even really had a first down. They'd run 6 plays and it was 18-0. And at that point, you kind of felt, well, this is over, because I don't know that Skytook didn't throw the ball well enough to get back in the game at that point. And they kept trying. They give the ball to McLaughlin 3 or 4 straight plays and try to throw a ball over the top. It only worked once or twice, but still, MacArthur has the kind of speed to catch him. And that was what impressed me about MacArthur. They're so fast. The receivers, Lorenzo West, Deion James, guys like that are incredibly fast on the outside, and Will Collins is actually a really, really good quarterback. I think he goes unnoticed. He's committed to Louisiana Monroe, but he can really throw the ball. His 77-yard touchdown pass was evidence of that. It was perfectly thrown on a post pattern, a double move. It was really well executed. And their defense, this is finally, I think that was the missing piece for MacArthur. The last few years they've been here, they never had the defense that could get it done. And they really shut down one of the state's top running backs and dominated. I mean, it was 39-0 going into the fourth quarter, and it was really, really dominant performance.
I was kind of bummed out just following along, because 5A had been so competitive all season and so much fun to follow.
Yeah,
especially like Lawton McAllister the previous week in the semifinals, and then it's a blowout in the finals.
Yeah. Hey, imagine if that game, the McAllister-Lawton Mac game, had been your title game.
Oh my
We'd be
gosh.
talking about it as one of the greatest championship games of all time. That would have been phenomenal.
That's just kind of unlucky there with how the bracket fell.
Right.
But.
Yeah, exactly. It really was. But it was still fun to see. Working at Lawton for 3 years, to see MacArthur finally get a title and do what they did, and Jamal Brown and Javon Harris, big alumni like that, hanging around the field afterwards. So
that was the thing. Lawton MacArthur finally got theirs, and Bixby finally got theirs too. They both had streaks of what they were 0 for 6 and 0 for 7 or something like that in state title games. So a couple firsts for both those schools.
Yeah, pretty impressive. Class 4A was interesting all the way through. We had the teams that kept looking like the favorites going down. Seemed like one a week almost, and we end up with Wagner defeating Oologah in the title game, another rematch of a regular season game that Oologah won and then forfeited because they had used an ineligible player. But how about the coaching job of Dale Connett at Wagner this season? Starting the season 1-4, and then obviously 1-3 legally because of the forfeit. But to come back from that start when they had really kind of fallen off the map and to be playing so well in the playoffs and turn this thing around.
Yeah, I mean, it was really incredible, And then 4A was kind of that class, though, especially once Anadarko started to pile up the injuries. I was kind of waiting for that team to maybe that's really coming on strong at the end. And I thought it was going to be Clinton.
Yeah.
Turns out to be Wagner, who they kind of had similar seasons, struggled early, but then finally get it together, get rolling and win it. And it's kind of funny when we do our picks. I'm behind, so I'm kind of trying to catch up with you guys.
Yeah, you get to see our picks because we send them to you.
And yeah, I do get to see them, so I'm like, okay, let me be a little bit different. We don't want to all pick the same teams anyway. But with that game, I went back and looked, and I thought, well, Wagner beat Oologah. earlier in the season. That's what it showed us on the schedule.
Right.
I wasn't smart enough to remember that Newark had to forfeit that game, so I thought, hey, this is an easy one to catch up. So I kind of got lucky there with picking Wagner based on that.
I was impressed with Condick. I've been around him multiple times, and he's always an impressive coach and a great guy to be around. And for him to do what he did with this program, I think is his best coaching job, even for the one they won the title a couple years ago. I think this is more impressive. He doesn't have those superstars that he's had in the past.
Right.
There's no Kevin Peterson. There's no Lawrence Evett. None of those guys. And he comes in with freshmen. There's freshmen starting. I mean, I was reading a story from the Muskogee Phoenix about one of the freshman receivers and how good he was.
Yeah.
And he sounds like he's going to be really good, but he's still a freshman. And you come in and win a 4A title. That's definitely one of the best coaching jobs in the state this year.
Absolutely. Moving on, obviously we'll touch on 3A briefly whenever we get around to it. But Class 2A is actually coming up on their championship game Friday night. Davis and Nowata at Stillwater High School Friday night at 7:00. We were in here last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess, talking about the possibility of a Davis OCS rematch, and Nowata spoiled that for us. But still a really intriguing ball game. Jacob, talk a little bit about Nowata.
Yeah, Nowata really surprised me. Friday night, I think I told someone before the game that OCS could blow them out, and then they got blown out, and I regret saying that now. But it was Nowata, Wyatt Stegerwald and Bryce Bell, and those two guys are just animals. Wyatt is a really good thrower. He could run the ball, but Bryce is one of the more impressive tight ends I'd seen this season. Every time he runs the routes well, he runs almost like a receiver. And Nowata's coach would point that out to you, that he runs so well, and he did. He would catch balls over the top and then outrun OCS guys. And OCS has a lot of speed. And that was what most impressed me the most. And they dominated so well up front, which I always thought was a concern for OCS anyways, is that they're never huge. But Derek Turner knows how to coach linemen because he was a defensive lineman, and they always do so well. But it was so impressive to see them dominate OCS the way they did. And it's all kinds of momentum going against a team like Davis that is going to be a big challenge for them. They've never seen a team like Davis, I don't think.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because Davis has just rolled along through this season for the most part. Not challenged a ton. They've had a couple of close games along the way, but obviously the game against Adair that they had to pull out late. But they take down Hennessy 48-31 to get into the title game. But it just feels like business as usual for Davis, doesn't it, Trent?
Yeah, it does. But, with Nowata, going back to them a little bit in the OCS matchup that, I even said a couple weeks ago I was looking forward to Davis OCS. But after I saw Nowata, I saw them the week before against Washington, I went ahead and picked Nowata to beat OCS because I saw they were able to slow down. I mean, I guess I had a little bit of advantage there over you guys. You hadn't seen them. But they were able to slow down Washington's speed, which is probably as good as anybody in 2A. Mm-hmm. And so I knew after seeing that they would have a chance to do the same, slow down OCS's big playability. I didn't think they'd shut them out. And then offensively, Jacob was mentioning Stegerwald and Bell, the tight end. I think he's a D1 kid. I don't know what his college prospects are, but he looks like a Division I football player.
Yeah, he's a little smaller than I thought he was. Look at just watching him play.
Right, but he can. Afterwards. I mean, he can get open with the best of them. He's got great hands. But no, Davis. Not picking against them this week. Mm-hmm. Nowata, they got the great senior class. They were 0-10 as freshmen. Now they're in the state finals, but yeah, business as usual for Davis. I expect them to finish it off with back-to-back titles there in 2A.
My question for you is, after watching that Washington-Nowata game, how good is Washington? Because they were able to score so many points, and OCS offense was just non-existent.
Well, it's funny. Their two best offensive players were hurt. Brady Colbeth for Washington got hurt in the second quarter. And then they had another running back, Ladley, I think is his name, that was unable to go, had a twisted ankle. So, Washington I would think would be in this position because it was only a 7-point game. I mean, Nowata had to score with a minute left just to end up winning, and Washington almost went back down and tied it. So, yeah, no, Washington, it really just kind of an unlucky break there with those two injuries, but that's just the way it goes, I guess.
Moving on to Class A, we've got Cats and Dogs fighting it out in the championship game. Cash and Wildcats against the Thomas Terriers in the Class A championship game Friday night at Enid High School. 7 p.m. kickoff there. I was up at the Cashin ball game at Glenpool when they defeated Tallahena. Really impressive performance on both sides of the ball. It's hard to explain to people that when a team gives up 32 points, how well their defense really played. But the big playability of Alan Lockhart and the Tallahena offense is really legit. They made them uncomfortable. They beat up Lockhart a little bit, got him he kind of had a bum ankle for most of the second half, and made it really tough for him to do things. Made them have to get the ball out of his hands, and that was really impressive. He still was able to hurt them a little bit with some big plays, but really impressive performance, and that's going to be the big key for Cashin this week, to see if that defense can play up to that same standard against a Thomas team that is a little bit more physical. They've been scoring points at a higher rate this year than they were a year ago, so I think that they're definitely improved on the offensive side of the ball as well. So either one of you jump in. How do you see this ball game playing out?
Well, I made the mistake of picking against Cashin last week. I picked him to win state before the playoffs, and then I pick against him for some reason.
You got called out on that one, too.
Yeah, I did. I don't know what I'm thinking, but I deserved getting called out for that one. So, but I'm back on the Cashin bandwagon. That offense is pretty impressive. I never should have jumped off it to begin with, obviously. And Thomas, I don't really know that much about them. Other than I grew up 10 miles down the road, and they've always played really good football. So, there's an expectation to win there as well, just like there is at Cashin's. I expect it to be a good game, but I'm back on the Cashin bandwagon there.
Yeah, my question for you, Scott, is you've seen Cashin. All I've heard about Thomas is how big their offensive line is.
Right.
How good is Cashin up front?
I think that they defensively match up with them really well, because they've got some big guys in the middle who can I think keep the attention of the interior of the line, and they're small and fast on the outside, which gives them a lot of potential to get around some of those guys and fill some gaps. And then they've got good speed and size at linebacker. Matt Harmon is playing a linebacker spot for him, and he's a big physical kid. He's not huge, but he's
bulky.
He is. He's a good sized linebacker for Class A football. Quick Matt Harmon story. He was so fired up after the semifinal win, and I'm standing there waiting to interview him, and I'm just standing there, and people keep coming up, and he's people trying to shake his hand, and he's just overlooking the handshake and going for a big hug. Picked up his mom and his girlfriend, and so I'm standing there, and I say, "Hey Matt, can I bug you for a second?" He goes, "Absolutely." Came and give me a big hug, big bear hug, and then he kind of looked at me and realized he had no idea who I was, and so I introduced myself. And it was entertaining, because it just that's one of the things that's so much fun about covering high school kids is seeing the pure passion for victories like that, and it was really cool. And if he wins state again,
you're gonna get tackled.
I might. He might take me down. I don't know. It'll be fun. So. But anyway, back to your point, Jacob, is that I think that they have a varied mix up on the defensive front, and I think that'll give them the ability to cause some problems for Thomas up front. So they've got a lot of speed in places where you need speed at. So I think that's going to be the key for them. Protecting Matt Harmon at quarterback will be a big deal, making sure that you give him time to get the ball off. But they've got a lot of weapons with him: Dylan Kordelsky, Caleb George, who is really fast. They hit him on an 89-yard touchdown pass. He was streaking down the sideline, and it looked like the Tallahena safety had the angle on him. And 20 yards later, the guy was 10 yards behind him. So they got some talent, and I think that I like Cashin in this ball game. But we'll see how it plays out. It's going to be a fun one up there at Enid High School. Briefly, guys, we'll talk a little bit about 3A. Cushing did upset Kingfisher, and what's really kind of been swept under the rug, but it's probably one of the bigger upsets of the season, considering that they lost 49-7 in the regular season matchup and beat them in the playoffs. Heritage Hall is still waiting to see who they're going to play. As of the time that we're taping this show on Tuesday afternoon, the court case still hasn't been heard between Douglas and Locust Grove, so we have no idea what's going to happen there. So just for some fun here to finish the show up, yes or no, will there be a Class 3A football game played this week, Jacob?
I think yes.
Who is it?
No, that's a good question.
I left that part out of the question. I apologize, but I'm asking you anyway.
I think if there's one played this week, it's Heritage Hall, Locust Grove.
Well, that wasn't the question I asked. You said there's going to be a game, so you're saying it's Heritage Hall, Locust Grove?
Yeah. If I'm saying there's a game, it's Heritage Hall, Locust Grove.
I'm saying no, and I honestly don't have much hope for one before Christmas, but I think when we do play one, it will be Heritage Hall, Locust Grove.
And you stole my answer. That's I have the same feeling as you. I don't think that there will be another 3A game played in this calendar year. I really don't. I've got a really bad feeling about it. I hope that I'm wrong.
Me too.
But I really have a bad feeling that this is going to drag out on Wednesday after this hearing of the injunction, and then by the time we get around to this, I think it's going to be January, and it's going to be a mess. I think that the next 3A game that's played will be Heritage Hall, Locust Grove. When, I have no idea. I hope that